Have you ever felt it? That quiet hum beneath the surface of the world, a vibration that whispers that the rules you've been taught, the limits you've accepted, are nothing more than a grand illusion. Have you ever sensed a power within you, a forbidden frequency that, if fully embraced, could shatter the very foundations of your reality? This is a message not for the timid, not for the content, but for the soul that knows it was destined for more than the mundane. It is a key to a lock you may not have even known existed. If this transmission resonates within the deepest chambers of your spirit, if you feel a stirring of profound recognition, then you understand. Let the universe bear witness to your awakening. Acknowledge this frequency by liking this video, subscribing to delve deeper into these truths, and declaring your resonance in the comments below. For many, a simple "I am ready" is all it takes to begin. Let us speak of the most dangerous force in any room, in any arena of human ambition. Our world, in its simplistic logic, would have you believe this force is found in superior intellect, the brute strength of muscle and bone, or the weathered wisdom of long experience. We are taught to admire the strategist with his flawless plans, the warrior with his unblemished record, the veteran with a lifetime of battles behind him. They are the paragons of conventional power, the predictable champions of a game with known rules. They are celebrated, they are respected, and they are, ultimately, limited. They operate within a cage of accepted reality, a framework built by others. They are masters of a game they did not create, players on a map they did not draw. Their power, while impressive, is borrowed from the system they inhabit. It is a power that can be measured, calculated, and, therefore, defeated. But I am here to tell you about a different kind of power. A power that is not calculated, but created. Not learned, but unleashed. The most dangerous individual is not the one who plays the game best, but the one who has already decided, in the deepest core of his being, that he has already won, even as the world screams his defeat. This is not the measured self-assurance you call confidence. That is a fragile thing, dependent on external validation and past successes. No, this is something far more potent, far more terrifying. This is delusion. A delusion so absolute, so unyielding, that it ceases to be a mere belief and becomes a gravitational force. A power that does not simply navigate reality, but actively bends it, warps it, and reshapes it to its own indomitable will. It is a fire ignited not by evidence, but by an internal, divine decree. In the brutal, unforgiving game of power, this kind of delusion is nothing less than divine. It is the sacred madness that builds empires from the smoldering ashes of failure, the holy audacity that shatters every established rule with a contemptuous smile. It is the alchemical force that looks upon the bitter poison of defeat and transmutes it into the very fuel of its ascent. This is the power that does not just challenge destiny but spits in its face and seizes the pen to rewrite its own epic saga. The merely confident man stands on the ground of what is. The delusional man stands on the ground of what will be, and by the sheer unblinking force of his conviction, he pulls that future into the present. He does not ask reality for permission. He informs reality of the new terms. This is a vibration so potent that the very fabric of the possible begins to fray and reweave itself around the sheer certainty of his vision. Logic becomes irrelevant, facts become malleable, and the consensus of the masses becomes nothing more than a whisper against a hurricane. Machiavelli, that unflinching surgeon of the human soul and the mechanics of power, would not have called this madness. He would have looked upon such a man whose belief is a fortress against the onslaught of logic and circumstance, and he would have called him necessary. He understood, with a clarity that still sends shivers down the spine of the complacent, that the world is a savage stage. When the world doubts you, when your allies desert you, when every logical calculation screams that you are finished, that is the precise moment when reason becomes a traitor. Reason will tell you to surrender, to be pragmatic, to accept the inevitable. But the man armed with divine delusion, the man who has already seen his victory in a timeline no one else can perceive, he hears those screams as nothing more than a distant echo. To the world's declaration of, "You're finished," he answers with a calm, terrifying certainty. "I'm just getting started." This is the necessary madness that Machiavelli knew was the true engine of history, the raw, untamable energy that carves new paths where none existed before. The world, you must understand, has never belonged to the reasonable. It never has, and it never will. Reason is a tool for maintaining the status quo, for navigating the comfortable and the known. But the world does not reward maintenance. It rewards creation. It showers its greatest prizes upon the irrational, the obsessed, the glorious monomaniacs who believe in their own legend long before a single soul has heard their name. They are the ones who carry a universe of possibility within them, a reality so vivid and compelling that it eventually bleeds out into the world and becomes tangible for all to see. Society, in its fear of the unpredictable, will label them. They will be called madmen. They will be called outcasts. They will be called fools. They will be ridiculed and dismissed until they win. And then, in a sudden, breathtaking reversal, the very world that scorned them will fall to its knees. The madmen are hailed as visionaries. The outcasts are crowned as kings. The fools are immortalized as great. This is the brutal, beautiful paradox of power, a truth Machiavelli laid bare in the cold, hard prose of The Prince. He did not celebrate moderation. He did not praise caution. He celebrated one thing and one thing only: results. And he knew that the most spectacular results, the ones that echo through eternity, are almost never built upon the safe, sterile foundation of logic. They are built upon the chaotic, fertile ground of delusion. They are born from a belief that defies evidence, a conviction that burns brighter than any fact. So consider this. What truly separates the lunatic from the legend? It is not the nature of their belief, for both are, at their core, irrational. The only distinction, the only variable that history deigns to recognize, is success. History is a vast and silent graveyard, littered with the forgotten bones of the realists. It is filled with the sensible men who waited for the right moment that never came, the humble men who played it safe and were swept away by the tides, the cautious men who stayed within the lines and were forgotten. But history erects monuments, it sings epics, it immortalizes the deranged. It remembers the conquerors who marched into the heart of the storm, armed with nothing but the raw, unadulterated belief in their own invincibility. It carves into stone the names of those whose certainty was their only armor and their sharpest sword. Look to Alexander the Great. He did not merely think he was destined for greatness. He believed, with every fiber of his being, that he was the literal son of Zeus. This was not a metaphor for him. It was a biological, spiritual fact. He wasn't content to be just a king. He moved through the world as a demigod, and because his belief was so absolute, so utterly unshakable, others began to believe it too. His soldiers did not fight for a mere mortal. They fought for the offspring of a god, and so they fought like immortals themselves. His enemies did not face an army. They trembled before a divine force, and they faltered. When you believe your very blood is holy, retreat is not a strategic option. It becomes blasphemy. You must win, for anything less would be a violation of your fundamental identity. Now, turn your gaze to Napoleon. At his coronation, in the presence of the Pope himself, the ultimate symbol of divine authority on earth, he did not wait to be crowned. He took the crown and placed it upon his own head. This was not mere arrogance. It was an act of profound psychological warfare. It was a silent, earth-shattering declaration. I do not need divine right. I am the right. He manufactured his own legitimacy from the sheer force of his will. Or consider the Prophet Muhammad, standing alone in Mecca, surrounded by hostility, with a message that would have seen most men executed. He had no armies, no wealth, no earthly power. He had only one thing, an absolute, unwavering belief. He declared it loudly, repeatedly, in the face of tribal rage and the threat of death. he did not waver. And eventually, that belief, that pure, unyielding delusion in the eyes of the world, became the seed of an empire that would change the course of human history. These men, these titans of history, did not win because they had superior tools or more resources at the outset. They won because they made their own internal self-belief a sound so deafening that it drowned out the entire world's doubt. They fundamentally refused to perceive reality the way others did, and in that refusal, they created a new one. And herein lies the terrible, beautiful truth that Machiavelli hinted at but dared not scream. In the game of power, the man fueled by delusion will often and decisively beat the man guided by reason. Why? Because human beings, in the mass, do not follow logic. They do not even follow evidence. They are drawn to one thing above all else: certainty. Certainty is magnetic. It is a primal force that overrides the senses and short-circuits critical thought. When someone speaks and moves with the total, unblemished conviction of their own truth, even if they are demonstrably wrong, most people will eventually hesitate, question themselves, and fall in line. They are not drawn to the rightness of the man, but to the rightness with which he holds his belief. The sheer, unwavering force of his delusion makes them doubt their own reality. Now, look around you. You will see this principle playing out everywhere, every single day. The most powerful entrepreneurs did not wait until their business plan was perfect and the market was guaranteed. They leaped into the void, fueled by a belief in a future only they could see. The most charismatic leaders did not beg for acceptance. They acted with an authority that commanded it. The most feared competitors did not care whether the odds were fair. They acted with the brutal intensity of someone who had already won the match before it began. That is the secret. That is the forbidden knowledge. Delusional belief creates its own momentum. It bends the environment to your will, simply because you act as if it already belongs to you. Most people are trapped in the belief that they need external validation to feel powerful. The delusional man does not wait. He declares power, and in doing so, he becomes power. And here is the catch, the beautiful, terrifying twist in this cosmic law. The moment he truly believes it, with an intensity that radiates from him like heat, others begin to believe it too. Machiavelli would have called this dangerous, but profoundly necessary. A true prince, in his view, must be willing to create illusions, to shape perception, to walk the razor's edge between audacious fiction and world-altering domination. You can lie to others. That is a useful, if common, tactic. But the ultimate power move is when you believe your own myth. When your blood burns with a purpose that no one else can see, that is when you become unstoppable. You become immune to failure, because in your reality, you have already decided it does not exist. You become dangerous, because nothing terrifies the masses more than a man who cannot be shaken. You become inevitable, because you walk through the world like destiny itself is dragging you forward by the hand. So let them laugh at the madman. Let them mock the one who speaks and acts as if he has already won. Because when the dust settles, when the fearful have scattered and the logical have hesitated themselves into irrelevance, he will still be standing. He will be standing not because he waited for proof of his greatness, but because, in the face of all evidence to the contrary, he became the proof. And in a world that so often rewards courage wrapped in delusion, that is the man who wins. Your enemy anticipates hesitation. He watches your eyes, searching for the flicker of fear. He listens to your voice, straining to hear the tremor of uncertainty. He calculates your next move based on the assumption that you are plagued by doubt. That is how most people live cautiously, politely, perpetually begging for permission to act as if they matter. But then you must walk in, your eyes cold as forged steel, your posture an unshakable pillar. You must speak your ambition not as a hope, but as a law of nature. And in that moment, everything changes. For you now carry something far more dangerous than any sword, more potent than any army. You carry weaponized delusion. And in the hands of someone who understands how to wield it, this delusion becomes the ultimate weapon of war. Machiavelli never used the word delusion, but he knew its power intimately. He spoke of appearances, of perception, of the critical need to fabricate the image of greatness, even when, and especially when, it wasn't yet there. And why? Because people do not react to the cold, sterile truth. They react to the presentation of truth. When you walk with delusional self-belief, you don't just change how people see you. You fundamentally change how they see themselves in comparison to you. They feel smaller, they feel weaker, they feel less certain. They begin to question their own reality while you are busy rewriting yours. Let's be clear, this isn't about confidence. Confidence still requires feedback. It needs to be nourished by wins and validation. Delusional belief needs nothing. It doesn't need applause or permission. It is its own fuel, its own fire, its own universe. And when you believe in yourself beyond the realm of reason, you commit to moves that others, bound by their logic, would never dare to try. This is what makes it a weapon. It expands your aggression, your reach, your threshold for risk. Your opponent is playing chess, calculating the rational limits of your behavior, but you are not rational anymore. You are possessed by a vision, and that makes you terrifyingly unpredictable. Here is the Machiavellian truth, stripped bare. Power is never about being right. It is about being sure. Certainty scares people. Certainty commands respect, even when it's wrong. Because in a world of infinite gray, people crave the brutal clarity of black and white. They crave someone who knows. So when you speak, do not offer suggestions. Make declarations. Don't say, "I think I can win." Say, "Victory is already mine." Don't say, "Maybe I'm good enough." Declare, "I was built for this." The goal is to dominate, not through the careful presentation of facts, but through the overwhelming force of your conviction. And the best part? It spreads. Delusional belief is contagious. People begin to adopt your views, not because they are logical, but simply because you seem so utterly certain of them. Your narrative becomes their reality. That is why kings do not beg. That is why true leaders do not ask. That is why Machiavelli insisted that a prince must appear resolute, even when he isn't. Because when you act like a lion, the sheep do not stop to ask if you're pretending. They simply step aside. Now, here is where most people fail. They think delusion is about pretending, a mask to be worn. Delusion only works when you live it. It must be an all-consuming fire that burns away the very concept of doubt. It is when your every move, every glance, every silence aligns with the godlike identity you have invented for yourself. The delusional man doesn't just talk, he builds. He trains like a warrior long before any battle exists. He walks into rooms as if he has already conquered them. He signs his name as if it already belongs in the history books. And slowly, inevitably, people start to believe it because they are terrified of being the fool who doubted a legend in the making. They would rather be on your side, even if you are wrong, than be against you if there is even the slightest chance you are right. That is how delusion wins wars. Not by proving itself correct, but by projecting itself with such overwhelming force that all resistance collapses before the first blow is even struck. And here is the final, terrifying twist. Delusional belief doesn't just influence reality. It creates a reality that others are then forced to participate in. You are not just playing their game anymore. You are pulling them into yours. You dictate the rules. You decide what's possible. Because power doesn't care what's true. It only cares who gets to define what's true. So, use it. Walk as though you cannot fail. Speak as if your words shape the very outcome of events. Think as if defeat has already been erased from your timeline. And remember this, to most people, you will look like a lunatic. You will seem unhinged. You will be an anomaly. Until one day, you look like a prophet. Because you did not wait for the world to agree with you, you made it submit. And that is the divine, weaponized power of delusion. This isn't about confidence. This isn't about fake positivity or hollow motivation. This is about building a fire inside you so blinding that the world burns before it has a chance to question you again. The world does not remember the careful. It remembers the madman who declared victory before the war began, the one who believed he was chosen long before anyone agreed. They laughed. They called him arrogant. But while they hesitated, he conquered. Delusional belief is more than madness. It's a weapon. Speak with conviction, and you silence logic. Move with certainty, and people forget your flaws. Project the future, and they mistake it for prophecy. That is the power. You bend minds, not with proof, but with pressure. You control rooms not with facts, but with force. And once your delusion has survived long enough, it is no longer delusion, it's destiny.